The Culling game was the ultimate function, a human Kodoku ritual where representatives of all known forms of cursed energy fought to the death. Some of the players represented the pinnacle of their respective forms of cursed energy. For example, the pinnacle of non-sorcerers, Maki Zane, or the ceiling of sorcery, Ryomen Sukuna. What we'll do today is rank the 10 strongest active players as of Season 3. We'll make a small exception for one of the players on this list, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Kicking off the list at number 10 is the former captain of the Sun, Moon, and Star Squad, Takako Uro. She boasts the best defensive curse technique in all JJK. Besides Satoru Gojo, of course. Uro's technique allows her to treat the sky like a surface that can either redirect forces around her or amplify a force she applies directly to it. Defensively, this makes her a pain in the ass to deal with, because she can parry most offense you throw at her. Offensively, this makes her a bigger pain in the ass, because she can bypass all defense and durability with her own offense. And yes, that includes Satoru Gojo's Infinity. Satoru's barrier filters incoming projectiles according to shape, velocity, etc. Any mass shaping up to be a threat is effectively stopped in its tracks. Uro's technique bypasses the Infinity since it won't target Satoru Gojo. The nice techniques target and transmute kinetic energy to space itself, so anything occupying said space will experience its intended effect. There's only a few and very niche techniques that can get through Uro's guard, so she's just as elusive fighting on the back foot. What I love about Uro's fight style is she plays into her strengths. She can dance with the best of them on the back foot as a pure counter striker. Even Yuta Okkotsu found it difficult to land anything significant without immobilizing her first with something like her speech. This gave Yuta and Rika the window to jump her something vicious. Ryu then interrupted before they could flatten her out. So Yuta and Rika tried that jumping shit again when Uro was mobile, and she turned their flurry into a reverse jumping. Ryu couldn't land anything clean neither unless she was distracted. Uro has also achieved domain expansion, so we've only seen a glimpse of her destructive potential. Takako is one of the few who could oppose Satoru Gojo. Low-key, I want to see that fight. Bro, I want to see how Satoru would deal with the issues Uro presents. Not just the combative issues, but the philosophical as well. I'm curious how Satoru would react to the only woman who can touch him against his will. The line he drew between himself and people as a living creature flies straight out the window with Uro. Yuta was onto something in their conversation back in Africa. The interaction between Uro and Satoru would be hilarious to say the least. She's only this low on our list due to a lack of RCT and a few unfavorable matchups further up this list. Sitting at number 9 is the newly awakened Hiromi Higuruma. This is about the only period where those above him on this list can catch him lacking, when Hiromi was just a hatchling learning how to walk. The keys to victory against Hiromi are straightforward. You're gonna lose a domain clash, so get that out of your mind first off. Secondly, pray to the deity of your choosing to be with you in battle, because your curse technique will not. If you're lucky enough to avoid the death penalty on your first trial, you then need to be able to survive Hiromi without your technique. This is where most sorcerers become deer in the headlights for Hiromi, because you're then expected to kill him before he expands his domain a second time. Once that happens, your goose is completely cooked. The longer the fight goes, the more excuses Judgment cooks up to give you the needle. Also, if you do manage to kill him somehow, make peace with losing your curse technique forever, because his curse will get stronger posthumously. Squabbling Higuruma just isn't worth it, to be honest, bro. Unless you one-shot him from the jump, you lose even if you win. Just take the plea deal and do your time, you know? Uro is one such sorcerer who's a fish out of water once Hiromi gets active. Once Higuruma confiscates sky manipulation, it is wraps. Shit, Uro may even get the death penalty straight away, due to the many war crimes she performed on behalf of Yuta's great-great-granddaddy. There is no man alive that Hiromi cannot judge, except number 2 on this list. At this point, Hiromi runs into a wall at number 8 on our list. Jane Juliet. I mean Ryu Ishigori, god damn it. Ryu's technique is simply curse energy expulsion. Kenny tells us this curse energy output levels reserved for special grades. So there's special grade levels of output, and then there's Ryu Ishigori. Ryu had the highest curse energy output in history, superior than even Ryomen Sukuna. Ryu's output was later surpassed by the Queen of Curses and the Culling in their primes. Ryu hits harder than Wide Body Hen era Sukuna. He punches harder than Satoru without blue reinforcement. This dude bangs his chest in a fever, and the ground he stands on cannot support him. The walls cannot contain his lust. Ryu Ishigori was power itself. The problem for Hiromi is after he confiscates Ryu's curse technique, he won't anticipate the granite blast coming his way when he least expects it. Sorcerers are con artists at the end of the day. Just like it did when he used confiscation on Sukuna. His inexperience would cost him dearly at this point in Higuruma's development. Jane Juliet runs into a wall himself once he encounters number 7 on our list, the immortal Kinji Hakari. From here on up, everyone on this list are only those worthy of dining at Ryu's table. Hakari's jackpot pretty much nullifies Ryu's strengths, but Ryu's domain makes things a bit interesting. Back in Sendai, Ryu expanded his domain with nothing but bad intentions. His plan was to nuke the entire map within his domain. That's not something you want to eat from someone with higher output than Sukuna and Satoru. It wouldn't be a stretch to say Ryu sure head to some nonsense that matches Sukuna's thermobaric explosions, if not surpassing them. One thing is certain, Ryu Ishigori has by far the most destructive domain on this list. Hakari at this point had not developed anti-domain countermeasures. Who knows if he ever did, he always skipped class. Fortunately for him, they may be completely unnecessary for this particular fight. Besides Satoru and Mahoraga, Hakari is specially equipped to eat malevolent shrine slashes at full output. It's only when the flames come in that Hakari is cooked. With that said, I'll give Hakari about a 20% chance of dealing enough damage to Ryu within his domain for it to crumble. Let Hakari tell it, that's some good ass odds. Slap that shit on the parlay. Those fights would be disgusting. I am talking flesh melting off bone. Hakari will get his arm blown off repeatedly just to punch that pompadour. You can bet the house he'll find the target eventually. And once he does, Ryu is going out cold. Hakari finds himself in a bit of a pickle when he encounters number 6 on our list. The most unserious special grade ever conceived, Fumihiko Takaba. Where do I even start with this guy? How about I don't? Takaba brings anything he thinks is funny into reality. And that right there in the fine print is the motherfucker. It need only be funny to Takaba. This technique becomes oppressive in the hands of a comic with all the confidence and none of the funny. Bro, what do you call the Dunning-Kruger effect but for being funny? Fuck it, let's call it Shabism. Takaba's Shabism makes the comedian the most oppressive technique in JJK. Even more than judgment, you will be pulled into a bunch of unfunny imaginary scenarios where you accumulate real and nebulous physical damage, especially if you try to fight the comedy. The only way out is to be funnier than Takaba. Now, Takaba is about as funny as Gringo Papi, so you think that'll be simple. But remember now, you gotta be funnier than Takaba in his own eyes. The closer you are to a Dave Chappelle, the higher the likelihood you're gonna lose. But you just might survive the comedian if you were a regular on Kill Tony. If you bomb just the right amount, you may make Takaba feel bad you're out-jobbing him. That'll loosen his technique's grip on you. With that said, all of my viewers and Hakari are absolutely cooked when facing the comedian. We're all dying unfunny deaths in a bad skit with no punchline. Excuse me, Takaba doesn't kill, but you'll probably wish he did. For these reasons, Takaba loses to number 5 on our list. The man who went on to become the greatest sorcerer of all time. The Queen of Curses, Yuta Okkotsu. Yuta was smart enough to figure out the comedian, and according to Satoru, Yuta would also kill it at the comedy mothership. I won't elaborate further. Now, here's the thing about Sendai Yuta. I may as well address this because someone just put me on fraud watch for this placement. At this point in his development, Yuta was not ready for the top 4 on this list. It's important to note at this point Yuta was second only to Satoru in unusual abilities, not strength. When Satoru was sealed, the strongest sorcerer in the modern era was Yuki Tsukumo. Yuki in the top 4 on this list would do unspeakable things to Sendai Yuta. Unfortunately, it's my job to speak on them anyway. Yuta's limitation was mainly rooted in his curse energy efficiency. Put simply, Yuta's curse energy control was dogshit. Not mid, not just okay, not meh, it was complete and utter dogshit. Yuta had no business burning through his reserves faster than his opponents in Sendai. Yuta was the only sorcerer who existed in Sukuna's plane of curse energy. He was also the only one who could sense the bottom of Sukuna's reserves. In contrast, Ryu and Uro could only see Yuta's when he was near depleted for them to comprehend it. Every special grade on this list was further from Yuta than Yuta was from Sukuna. Yet somehow Yuta ran out of gas first. In combat, Yuta is constantly surging with curse energy, every limb reinforced up the wazoo. Yuji thought this was intentional so Yuta's moves cannot be predicted. Technically he's right, but it was primarily a symptom of a much larger problem. Yuta Okkotsu was destined to play with house money. Before he let Dika go, Yuta had access to infinite curse energy. Sorcerers don't just reinforce themselves with precision just to be deceptive. They have to be mindful of their energy expenditure. Unlike any sorcerer ever, Yuta didn't have those problems. He'd flare his shit up to max output, then hit you on the leg and hope your neck breaks from the impact. His habits was the byproducts of never having to be efficient. It wasn't until his training in Africa that he had to learn to manage his now finite resources. But even then, until Sendai, he vaporized every threat in 5 seconds, so efficiency still wasn't an immediate priority in his mind. Being fair to Yuta, his bad habits was completely understandable, but this underlying issue rears its head when he encounters problems he cannot vanquish in just 5 minutes. Let's take Yuki Tsukumo for example. Yuta was not that much faster to weave all of Yuki's blows. He'd have to block to protect vital organs eventually, which means something in his guard is getting blown off and he'll have to heal each time. Given his bond's efficiency, he would need to re-up faster than in Sendai. And that's exactly where Yuki gets him. Sendai Yuta's copy was scary mostly for its potential, not lethality. He didn't have Jacob's ladder or a sure hit that starts with cleaves and dismantles, then thermobaric explosions when his furnace was heated, at the time. One hit from Garuda and Dika would also reach her limit. Anywhere Sendai Yuta wants to take it, Yuki can go there. Yuta's getting cooked in the domains whilst their sure hits clash if that is poison. Or fend off the spatula until he inevitably bottoms out a second time. Maybe he can use Dika being summoned to fluke Yuki somehow. Kinda like Divine Dog did Reggie, but you get my point. Satoru was always on his ass about this, but you know teenagers. This lesson for Yuta came in Sendai when it was brought to the brink by 3 inferior opponents, in tandem with a chilling warning from Uro. Yuta was resolved to take out Kenny and end the Culling game by himself. He now contemplated the very real possibility that he would have to go through the strongest in history. Whilst everyone focused their efforts on unsealing Satoru so he would solve everything, Yuta's efforts were entirely focused on smoking both Kenjaku and Sukuna himself. Real talk, Yuta may have more screws loose than Yuji. After a month of switch training with Satoru, Yuta improved his efficiency with the help of the 6 eyes. The Limitless forced Yuta to manage his energy on an atomic level, minutely and constantly. After the time skip, Yuta was a completely different sorcerer. He faced the strongest in history and not once did he bottom out or need the fully manifested Dika. Yuta went from a baby special grade in Sendai to a sorcerer who solos 15-finger Meguna before the bath. Now, what does this have to do with Sendai Yuta? Absolutely nothing. But is it relevant to our list though? Also no. Now, one could argue there was a method to my tangent, as one does not simply place Yuta 5th for anything. Do not be fooled by the force of my eloquence, bro. Any excuse to pour honey on my goat, really? The queen reaches his limit when he encounters number 4 on our list, Megumi Fushiguro. Everyone and their grandmother knows exactly why he's on this placement. Sure, Megumi is gonna die in the process, but he's taken every soul below him on this list down with him. Sendai Yuta was not ready to take the Mahoraga test. Yuta's pure love had enough output to obliterate Mahoraga in one shot. As a brat, far from his prime, Yuta's output was on par with the greatest in history. In a perfect world, Yuta opens his domain and vaporizes Mahoraga in one shot with pure love at 120%. But thing is, Yuta didn't have knowledge of the nonsense up Megumi's sleeve. Even Megumi didn't know the nonsense up his own sleeve. Mahoraga's abilities were classified information even within the big 3 families. So Yuta would have to fuck around and find out. The problem for Yuta is he incorporated bursts of explosive curse energy to his regular attacks. It's cold as fuck when Yuta uses his curse energy like Getsuga as it did with Kuro Urushi. But this is ill-advised against Mahoraga, even during Dika's 5 minutes. With each spectacular swing of the blade, Yuta bathes Mahoraga in his curse energy, rendering his pure love ineffective by the time he catches on to the Dharma chakra. Once that happens, Yuta has absolutely nothing for Mahoraga. At this point in time, our boy is getting the Karaba experience. With that said, our top 3 are not only worthy of dining at Ryu's table, they are the only active players who passed the Mahoraga test. Up until this point, I've been reluctant to repeat information that's already out there. My guys can read. I don't know about you, but I mentally check out whenever I hear an explanation of a technique for the nth time. I'm more interested in exploring places our community has never been. The top 3 strongest players on this list is where I come alive. Or as the kids would say, lock in. Before I turn it up a notch, if you hadn't already, hit the hype button, hit the like button. The Divine General gets dispatched when he runs the fade with number 3. The pinnacle of pure sorcery and scholarship, Kenjaku Itadori. Just like his son, Kenny's bag is criminally misunderstood. But we are gonna remedy that. There's 2 primary ways to dispatch Mahoraga. You could get him in one shot from a fresh technique with high output. Or you could hit him with an extension technique with high output while his Dharma chakra is processing and adapting to a different technique. Kenny can do both. Maximum Uzumaki's output is only limited by the quality and quantity of cursed spirits Kenny inputs into the distillation process. With that said, back in the night parade of 100 demons, Suguru unleashed a total of 2,000 cursed spirits between Tokyo and Kyoto for some strategic chaos. He kept the majority of his curses, a total of 4,600 in stocks in case he needs to empty the clip on Yuta. Kenny tells us that if Maximum Uzumaki's distillation process used all 60,000 plus curses in Geto's arsenal, it would have swallowed the Queen's pure love and Yuta along with it. This statement was terrifying for multiple reasons. Kenny took Geto's Jujutsu terrorism to a new level when he released over 10 million curses in the Shibuya incident. If 6,000 curses in a distillation process surpassed the Queen's output, then what untold havoc would the 10 million curses Kenny released just to create a little chaos wreak? If 10 million curses were disposable for Kenny, then how many did he keep in stock? In anticipation of a fight with Yuta, Geto kept over 60% of his stock. Kenny anticipated getting jumped by the heavy hitters late into the Culling game, a possible scuffle with Satoru Gojo, an unknown variable in Yuki Tsukumo, and special grade awakened sorcerers he wanted to give a spin. If 10 million curses were disposable, then Kenny kept a lot more than 10 million in stock, and that's a conservative estimate. That's not even the most absurd part of all this. This means over 10 million curse techniques were disposable for Kenny. When a curse of semi-grade 1 or higher is used, their technique is extracted. Assuming that 1% of his curses were semi-grade 1 or higher, that's about 10,000 techniques Kenny had up his sleeve and discarded, because he could have extracted 10,000 techniques from the 10 million curse spirits. The corollary to that is, Season 3 Kenny had over 10,000 curse techniques in his arsenal, though they were one-time use only. I have more to say on Kenny, but we gotta pack up Mahoraga first. Unlike Yuta, Kenny knew about Mahoraga's abilities. He chose Megumi to be the king's vessel because of said abilities after all. If you know, you know. So he understands there's no point in risking close quarters combats with Mahoraga. Just like with Yuki, he cannot deploy his high-grade curse spirits, because Mahoraga would just one-shot them on contacts with the Blade of Extermination. Kenny's best option is Maximum Uzumaki. He doesn't have to distill more than a mixed bag of about 10,000 curse spirits to pack Mahoraga up. This fight will be short and sweet. Kenny opens his domain with anti-gravity as the sure hit, and drops about 10k on Mahoraga's head with Uzumaki. A tamed Mahoraga would present more interesting issues, but a wild one is the bull and Kenny the matador. If you're smelling what I'm cooking so far, then I've described the most broken sorcerer in the sample size of this list. So how could anyone be above Kenny on this list, let alone 2? How does someone as skilled and cunning as Kenny with over 10,000 curse techniques up his sleeve lose to any active player as of Season 3? Put simply, for the same reason he wants no problems with Gojo and Sukuna. Overwhelming strength with disregard for all else like a calamity. For this reason, Kenny gets smoked by number 2 on our list, the God of War Reborn, Maki Zane. We're gonna make a small exception for Maki, though she'll be fully realized in the first few episodes of Season 4. The events leading up to that happen simultaneously with Sendai Colony. As such, I'm invoking the canonical timeline, because y'all must have forgot. Maki could have ended JJK 3 different times. Sukuna was saved by Maki's love for Megumi all 3 times. Gege gave us the most interesting subversion of a power system in all fiction, but to this day still goes largely underappreciated. The disrespect on Maki has been crazy. Sometimes I wonder if we read the same manga. I suspect the confusion has to do with Sukuna's fingers, which I'll attempt to dispel. The 20 pieces of Sukuna's soul contain his cursed energy. He doesn't get any faster or physically stronger from eating them. For Sukuna, the fingers are a battery or ammunition, not a steroid. Unlike the queen, Sukuna had insane efficiency. His consumption for curse energy reinforcement and techniques was minuscule. That's why he only burns through 10 fingers during his fight with Satoru. After multiple domain expansions, constant healing, multiple Shikigami used simultaneously, etc. It's also why he didn't slow down much from Yuji's fisticuffs in Shinjuku. The threshold for his output was lowered enough to nerf his techniques, but the amount of energy he put into reinforcement was so far below his threshold that the effects were negligible. Yuji improvised a domain expansion on the spot for this reason, acknowledging the brat encroaching upon his life. Sukuna simply decided not to get touched by Yuji and blitz him like he did at the beginning of their fight. The idea that 15-finger Sukuna is 5 times faster than 3-finger Sukuna is absurd, because the energy he consumes to reinforce his legs isn't even a fraction of a finger to begin with. Why would Sukuna need 20 fingers for maximum speed if his curse energy reinforcement barely consumes a fraction of 1? With that said, your eyes do not deceive you. Maki is faster than Sukuna. This objectively true statement from Megumi is treated like a throwaway because Sukuna was at 3 fingers at the time. Which is kinda strange because we saw it play out in Maki vs Sukuna with our own eyes. Maki is faster than the king. She is physically stronger than the king. It doesn't matter the curse energy reinforcement a sorcerer invests in their arms and legs. They'll never be faster or stronger than Maki. It doesn't matter if you're Sukuna, Satoru, Kashimo, or Karaba. With no techniques involved, no one is beating Maki in a contest of speed or strength. Prime Yuji and Yuji Kuna are the exception due to Yuji's heavenly restriction. Yuji changed a broke motherfucker's life. Sukuna never achieved the same peak levels of physical performance before or after possession of Yuji Itadori. Another instance I'd like to call upon is Toji's defeat by Satoru. The reason their rematch was lopsided is when Satoru awakened, he figured out using blue in his own body for high-speed movement. Satoru didn't just get physically faster all of a sudden, it was a technique. Similar to Karaba figuring out he can use his technique on his own body to achieve sub-light speeds. If anything, it was impressive Sukuna reached close to Maki's speeds with no technique, just reinforcement. It was a given in Yuji's body with his heavenly restricted base, but it was insane work in Megumi's. He was not the king of curses for nothing, but make no mistake, This was a Sukuna upscale, not the other way around. Gege's been trying to tell y'all Maki Zain is him. With the exception of Prime Yuji, Maki is stronger and faster than every sorcerer with reinforcement alone. Only with the use of specialized techniques like projection sorcery or limitless can one surpass Maki's speed. But her Viltrumite nonsense is only the tip. Maki's curse resistance is where things get really unfair. Her body is coated in a hex that resists all and negates most curses. Every sorcerer has to pay a tithe on their technique. Ryomen Sukuna is no exception, because what is a king to a god? Name any sorcerer and they have at least one technique Maki is completely immune to. Satoru's Infinite Void, Sukuna's Cleave. She doesn't have to play along with Takaba's Comedian. Judgment cannot impose non-violence on Maki inside deadly sentencing. The Divine General cannot even sense Maki. Ironically, its senses are a mirror of hers. It sees pure curse energy like infrared and inanimate objects map around it. I could go on and on. It's taken every bone in my body not to turn this video into unhinged Maki glaze. Heavens know it's a long time coming to make up for lost time in glaze unfulfilled and honey unpoured. Depending on the reception for this video, I may have to do a deep dive on the God of War. Because the disrespect on Toji, Maki, and Tsurugi has been crazy. But it boils down to this, right? A demonic fighter, physically stronger, faster, and more durable than the king. Invisible to the senses, so each time you lose sight of her means death. Sukuna has making me to think Maki didn't just decapitate instead of amputating him here. As if climbing up to her level wasn't a tall task, every sorcerer is stripped and disarmed in her arena. Every technique is less effective on her, while some completely bounce off her shit. For sorcerers not named Yuji, Satoru, and Sukuna, victory is all but guaranteed when she amputates one of their arms. That's the level of nonsense Maki Zain is on. As a creature, she's no lesser a special grade than Satoru and Sukuna, a being who exists above the laws of JJK's universe. She's not destroying a city with one swipe, and that's kinda the point. She gave up such low-tier mogging, and one thing about Fate is, it always keeps its word. Maki gave up the large-scale destructive potential that comes with cursed energy, in exchange for the art of killing. Every nook and cranny of Maki was designed to hunt and kill sorcerers. She is to sorcerers what cursed spirits are to humans, an invisible, powerful, and inevitable apex predator. To understand why Kenny is in all sorts of trouble with Maki, we must first acknowledge Kenny's greatest strength, which is his mind for the game. Let's play devil's advocate and assume Kenny can survive Maki long enough to be able to plot and scheme. I don't think he can, but for the sake of argument, let's say he does. Take this 1000 plus IQ play from Kenny for instance. He figures out that sending more high-grade cursed spirits at Yuki is a waste, but he doesn't tip his hand. Instead, he deceptively doubles down. Yuki figured out the timing of anti-gravity, so she'd only close the distance when it hits cooldown, during which he correctly assumed Kenny would use a curse to complete his assault. Playing into her expectations, Kenny summons a low-grade curse. Destroying it gave Yuki confidence to move in for the kill. Little did she know, Kenny lured her into a trap. Yuki thought she'd destroy the curse spirit, but just before Garuda made contact, Kenny used Uzumaki on it. Yuki didn't notice the curse didn't dissipate into dust when she supposedly exorcised it. Under a false sense of security, she closed the distance and she was greeted by a mini Uzumaki. Kenny's mind for the game is unmatched, paired with the unpredictability of the thousands of curse techniques at his fingertips. Be that as it may, all his tricks bend to the laws of curse energy and fate. Maki does not. Maki is not falling for the same trick as Yuki. Her senses are more omniscient than the 6 eyes in Mahoraga's wings. Factors like air density and temperature would give away the mini Uzumaki before the sparks of cursed energy ever do. Sukuna couldn't land a single hit unless he used a diversion first. She could see the world cutting slash coming from a mile away. She parried or dodged regular dismantles, and the few that connected, Sukuna had to do some real gymnastics to land. Kenny is nowhere close to Sukuna's level of physical performance required to deliver long-range techniques to Maki. nor survive a close-range encounter more than twice. Maki is walking through anti-gravity like a G. And if Kenny doesn't end it while she's slowed down by it, those are the last 6 seconds of his life. Overwhelming strength that disregards all, even fate and universal law, like a calamity. It's time to put some respect on the god of war. We gotta do better, y'all. Which brings us to the strongest player in the Culling game, the god of lightning, Hajime Kashimo. You're probably thinking, since I placed Uro 10th mainly due to a lack of RCT, then why did I give Kashimo a pass? If you are, thank you for paying attention, but no, Kashimo did not get a pass. Kashimo can in fact perform RCT. Kashimo's hand got chopped by Sukuna's world cutting slash and he healed it shortly afterwards. Like Maki, Kashimo is a victim of revisionist history. There's slander and then there's defamation, right? Kashimo's character has been defamed beyond belief. I couldn't paint the true essence of Kashimo's soul in just 5 minutes if I tried, but a doodle will suffice to clear this list. Kashimo is a special grade sorcerer with the most explosive technique in JJK. Mythical Beast Amber manifests electrical phenomena Kashimo converts from cursed energy. This effectively gives Kashimo access to one of the 4 fundamental forces in the universe, electromagnetism. Kashimo showcases 4 applications of his technique. Increased electrical activity in his brain gives him agility and reaction time superior to Maki. His sound waves perform a spectral analysis on the target to determine its resonance frequency. Once locked, he hits the target with enough energy at that frequency and it tears itself apart from within, similar to an opera singer shattering a wine glass. He can fire electromagnetic waves that vaporize irradiated objects. He can choose where in the electromagnetic spectrum he wants to operate. For instance, microwaves hit tissue from the inside out. Gamma rays cause acute radiation syndrome before completely vaporizing cells, etc. He also has X-ray vision to see through walls, bone structure, and internal organs. Then targets the exact resonance frequency of what he wants to destroy. Mythical Beast Amber is capable of so much more, but for the purposes of objectivity, we'll limit ourselves to what Kashimo has shown. Kashimo in base has speeds relative to Sukuna. The king had no issues dancing with Kashimo in base. It's when Kashimo turned to a mythical beast that the king could not keep up. Like we talked about earlier, Sukuna's transformation didn't make him any faster. He had to fully incarnate or die. Kashimo would vaporize him in the state he was in, so he needed to heal his flesh expeditiously. With his domain tucked and output in the gutter, Kashimo wasn't an opponent he could beat without his world cutting slash either. His 4 arms would also help counter Kashimo's agility. Grabbing Kashimo was just about the only thing the king could do to connect with anything in close range. Now for the elephant in the room, Kashimo's defeat. It's come to my attention that there is a misunderstanding of how Sukuna pulled this off. Sukuna's victory is often attributed to boosts from his transformation, which simply was not the case. I repeat, Sukuna did not get any stronger or faster. You could argue the hand arrow form was physically stronger than Megana, but you'd also have to concede he got slower than Megana, as acceleration is inversely proportional to mass. With the same amount of cursed energy reinforcements, that would make Megana faster, but that's neither here nor there. It wasn't Sukuna's stats that won him the fight, it was his mind for the game. The tide of battle shifted when Kashimo committed to an electromagnetic beam. Sukuna took advantage of Kashimo's stationary position whilst firing the beam to let off his world-cutting slash. Kashimo's beam got bisected and he barely got out of the way in time, but not before Kashimo's hand got nicked. That's when Sukuna noticed Kashimo heal and he saw an opportunity. Just like with Maki, Sukuna couldn't land anything significant unless he created a diversion first. So the king struck Kashimo with Supreme Martial Solution. This didn't hurt Kashimo, but it was a flashbang for his X-ray vision. He used this diversion to close the distance on Kashimo safely before grabbing him so he couldn't get away. Under normal circumstances, Kashimo could have evaded, but in addition to being blinded, he was running RCT and Mythical Beast Amber at the same time. Like we learned from Yuki and Satoru, this slowed him down and reduced his technique's output simultaneously. Sukuna didn't waste this opening and cut Kashimo down whilst he slowed down from the RCT. It's ironic the man accused of not being able to heal displayed RCT so advanced the game is still catching on to it. In closing, Kashimo pretty much smokes everybody on this list with a couple of exceptions, with Megumi and Maki being the only ones to put up a good fight. Maki versus Kashimo is close and could go either way because Kashimo's advantages can be temporarily nerfed whilst he heals. But very few have the physical performance required to survive 10 seconds with NBA Kashimo, let alone plot on his life later down the stretch. Enough said, that concludes my ranking of the 10 strongest active players as of Season 3. Comment your top 10 thoughts and opinions and let's talk about it. Catch me on the next one, gang.